Well, good evening and welcome to Nashville. I'm Alan Jackson. Every election tells us something about the candidates on the ballot, but every so often an election tells us something much bigger, the direction of a political party and perhaps even the direction of the country. Well, the Democratic Senate primary in Michigan may prove to be one of those moments. Abdul El-Sayed defeated the candidate backed by much of the Democratic establishment, despite tens of millions of dollars spent trying to stop him. If elected in November, he would become the first Muslim to serve in the United States Senate. El-Sayed has championed Medicare for all. He's called for abolishing ICE, expressed support for defunding the police. He's opposed U.S. military aid to Israel and has repeatedly accused Israel of committing genocide in its war against Hamas. Those positions were once considered outside the political mainstream. Today, they help propel him to a narrow victory in one of the nation's most important swing states. His victory also comes as Democratic Socialist of America-backed candidates continue defeating longtime Democratic incumbents around the country. From New York to Colorado to Michigan, candidates advocating a dramatically expanded federal government, the ending of immigration enforcement, and a belligerent posture towards Israel. Well, they're no longer operating on the political fringe. They are winning primaries. Does Michigan's election results signal a deeper ideological transformation that could reshape national politics for years to come? What does this mean for the Democratic Party and for the future direction of our entire nation? Well, in March 2026, after the death of Ayatollah Khamenei, Abdul El-Sayed refused to make a statement regarding the death of the evil dictator, because according to him, there were a lot of people who were sad over the Ayatollah's death. Well, just to remind you, this is the same Ayatollah whose regime killed over 50,000 of its own citizens in the streets in 1 week. 50,000 innocent civilians, and yet El-Sayed refused to make a comment. He has no problem making disparaging comments about Israel and calling Netanyahu a war criminal. On the issue of abortion, El-Sayed said abortion is health care. Those are the same words spoken by other socialists in our Congress, like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. Rashida Tlaib, at a congressional hearing, took it even further when she described a witness's abortion who was attending the hearing, and as I quote, "the best decision you ever made, an act of self-love." Well, if you're feeling uncomfortable with those words, good. But we need to be more than uncomfortable. It's time for Christians to act like the Christians from the Revolutionary period. We don't see that these days. You have to be willing to use your voice and say, this is just garbage. And it can't just stay within the safe confinement of church walls and in conversations with Christian friends. And I know I've used the reference before regarding the theater of the absurd. We've watched lots of these instances. When we see what's happening in the WNBA basketball games, folks, we just can't stay silent. Indiana basketball player Sophie Cunningham's stance that young female athletes should not have to go against biological men has triggered the woke mob. In Seattle, 2 teenage girls held a sign that read, "Thank you, Sophie, for speaking up for girls." Well, upon seeing the signs, the co-owner of the Seattle WNBA team, she got up, approached the girls who were seated courtside, and then proceeded to curse at them. She left one of them in tears. Then in another game in Minnesota, Sophie Cunningham was lectured by the opposing head coach, who was wearing a "Trans Kids Belong" shirt. Her shirt said "kids." Think about it for a moment. The mutilation of our children in pursuit of trans insanity is being championed by a head coach representing the WNBA. What message is that sending to children who just want to watch basketball? Is the WNBA condoning gender mutilation procedures for children? During the first 3 years of the Biden administration alone, there were more than 7,000 children who were administered puberty blockers and gender-altering hormones. There were over 4,000 children subjected to sex trait modification surgical interventions, things like mastectomies. These interventions were actually marketed to children. As the church, we have to ask ourselves how this happened on our watch. We must be the catalyst for change. If you're a Christian educator, a Christian coach, you should clearly say men shouldn't be in women's sports. Men and women, we're different. Every Christian parent should be saying this. If you're a healthcare worker, you can say, this isn't good science. The church has been taking a huge pass on this. We've been silent like sheep. Christians come and they'll whisper to me, Pastor, thank you for your courage. And I'm typically thinking, well, where's yours? We've got to have more boldness. It starts at our kitchen tables, then in our neighborhoods, our workplaces, our communities. If we'll do that, we'll see positive change, even in politics. When we speak truth and judge with truth as our standard, our lives will be better in every way. Our officials running for office, they'll be people of integrity, and our nation will experience better outcomes. Coming up next, we're going to hear from the veteran political strategist and founder of South and Hill Strategies, Colin Reed. He'll join us from Washington right after this short break. I'll be right back.
This year, we celebrate 250 years of God's faithfulness to our nation. From backyard picnics and ball games to laughter shared with family and friends, we've been given so many blessings to enjoy together. And in a world that feels increasingly divided, these moments remind us of what matters most: faith, freedom, family, and community. Alan Jackson Ministries wants to help you carry that message with you wherever you may go. This outdoor blanket and canvas tote bag are simple reminders of God's goodness and a way to spark meaningful conversations about faith and the hope we have in Him. Request your limited edition tote bag and outdoor blanket today with your gift of $100 or more at alanjackson.com or call 800-880-5102.
Tonight, we're joined by political strategist and founder of South and Hill Strategies, Colin Reed. Welcome to the show, Colin.
Alan, always a treat to be here.
Well, let's start with the recent headlines. They've been dominated by Michigan, where Abdul El Sayed, a Democratic socialist, has secured the Democratic nomination for Senate. It seems just otherworldly that this is happening. What's your take on what we're watching unfold?
You know, Alan, every couple of election years, we talk about how this is going to be the most important election of our lives, and we're about to enter unprecedented, uncharted waters. So I understand why viewers may tend to roll their eyes when they hear this. But what's happening in that Senate race is really something to behold, not only for the views Mr. El Sayed holds and the positions he's articulated and some of the more extreme things he said over the course of this campaign. And I'll give him some credit. At least he's being honest about what he believes and what he stands for, and he's not trying to be some quote-unquote moderate who turns out to be an extremist. But by virtue of the fact that this is not just now relegated to deep blue cities like New York City or Washington, D.C., where I sit, but Michigan is the heartbeat of the Midwest. It's the home of our big three auto manufacturers, so much grit, so much American tenacity over the years. And now it has, you have to say, a coin flip chance of being represented in the United States Senate by someone like Mr. El Sayed. And the views he holds are not just limited to him. They are infecting the Democratic Party writ large. And it's a really scary time.
Well, I heard a commentator say recently that if he were to secure this Senate seat, that his name would go to the top of the list for the 2028 presidential election. Is that possible?
Well, that 2028 presidential election lane on the Democratic side, at least, is so wide open that the list, the who's up and who's down shifts so frequently that anything can happen. And look, he's very well spoken. He engages with the media. He's present. He just won a hard-fought primary against not only the odds but a significant amount of outside money that were supporting his opponent, Haley Stevens, the congresswoman who came up short in that race. So look, you got to get through the general election first. There's 90 some odd days till the general election. Mike Rogers, the Republican candidate, is a formidable guy himself. And but ultimately, this is going to be a big test. And the views that Mr. El Sayed holds, the fact that he's campaigning alongside somebody who said that America deserves 9/11, and the fact that he thought to do that in the day of the election, it would be disqualifying under normal circumstances. But certainly this year, when next month will mark that somber moment when 25 years ago the Twin Towers came down in the greatest terrorist attack in United States history.
You know, I've heard the question asked repeatedly, what's happening to the Democratic Party? But I got another question. What's happening to the American electorate? that a Muslim communist looks appealing in the heartland of America. That seems to be a significant shift.
Yeah, I mean, we're only a generation removed from the United States winning the Cold War against Soviet Russia, the Berlin Wall coming down, and by and large, most people, whatever our political disagreements may be here at home, agreeing that America, capitalism, free enterprise, democracy is the way forward. I mean, some of these fights between Republicans and Democrats, they used to be fighting between the 40-yard line, if you will. Sure, there were good faith disagreements on tax policy or foreign policy or even the border and the way forward, but there was seemingly a consensus that America was a force for good, a beacon for hope, the greatest country the world has ever seen. And now the socialist movement doesn't believe any of that. They believe the American experiment is wrong, it's over, it needs to be replaced, and that's something to be reckoned with. And let's hope that cooler voices prevail in that Democratic Party, because honestly, Alan, our democracy, our country is healthier with two vibrant, major competing parties with good ideas, because iron sharpens iron and makes each party better.
Absolutely. Well, let's turn to Wisconsin for a moment. It's another purple state, and there's yet again another DSA candidate that's making headlines for extreme ideas. This case, she wants to cancel Thanksgiving, a whole variety of American holidays. It's Francesca Hong. She's leading three other candidates in the Democratic primary. What would you advise the Republicans to counter that ideology?
My counsel would be to not take anything for granted and not just explain that socialism is wrong and some of these ideas are extreme and crazy. And by the way, you don't need people like me to say that. There are leading Democrats out there who are sounding alarm bells on Ms. Hong, as well as some of the other DSA candidates across this country. Graybeards like James Carville of the Clinton years, David Axelrod of the Obama years, who are just taking a look and saying, whoa, Nelly. But my counsel to the Republican side would be, understand why socialism is appealing to some voters, and understand that there's a lot of people out there who are looking for a leg up, who are looking for a better way forward, who do feel as though the affordability crisis remains an issue. They do feel as though times are tough right now, and speak to that. Put forward ideas, put forward solutions, and not just talk about the extreme, outrageous views of the other side. There's plenty of time for that, and you should do that. But it's important to understand why some of these views are resonating and speak to those concerns, those fears, those hopes, as opposed to just demonizing the other side.
We've got a video clip of al-Sayed speaking about his attitude towards Israel. I want you to see it, and then I've got a question.
You told me back in April that the Israeli government is evil as Hamas is evil. Now, the United States government considers Hamas a foreign terrorist organization. So do you think that the Israeli government should be considered by the U.S. as a foreign terrorist organization?
It's certainly a rogue state. I mean, they did a genocide, Manu. I just want to ask you, like, what about doing a genocide is not evil in your book? Baseline, they do apartheid.
You know, it's pretty common amongst the socialists to be not only anti-Israel, but to be anti-Jewish. Do you think the Democratic Party is ready to sacrifice the support they've had from the Jewish community in order to embrace socialism?
Well, it's really sad. Again, on the 25th anniversary of 9/11, on the 25th anniversary of the greatest terror attacks in our country, that America is the world's only Jewish state, America's only and most reliable ally in that section of the world, find itself under such political attacks. And don't forget, it wasn't that long ago, Alan, that the mayor of New York City was musing about the idea of arresting Prime Minister Netanyahu when he came to visit there. So this is not just relegated to Mr. El-Sayed, unfortunately, and underpinning the undercurrents of a lot of this socialist ideology. I know Mr. El-Sayed doesn't identify as a socialist, but certainly many of his views fall into that camp, is this extreme anti-Semitism, this extreme anti-Israeli sentiment. And it's really dangerous. It's really sad. It was part of the philosophy of some of the communist rulers of a century ago, and you'd like to think that some of those abhorrent views have been left in the dustbin of history where they belong, but they haven't yet. And it's really disheartening and disturbing to see.
Colin, we need to take a short break. I hope you'll stay with us for another segment.
Of course.
For those of you watching, if you've got a phone nearby, try logging on to ajnow.com. You can send me an email. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. I'll be right back. I've learned as a pastor there's a tremendous difference in a crowd and a community of faith. When people decide to step out of the crowd and invest their time and their resources, they become a part of a community and it changes their lives. Well, I want to give you that invitation. I'm grateful you're a part of the crowd who watch the ministry. I want to ask you to consider becoming a monthly ministry partner. I believe if you'll make that regular commitment to what God is doing through this ministry, it'll bring momentum to your spiritual life and it will help us reach more people than we've ever reached with the gospel before. America is turning 250 years old. That's something that should unify us. We have so much to celebrate. There is no place like America. Our freedoms and liberties, they are unmatched in this world. Everything that's good about America, our laws, our opportunities, the prosperity we've enjoyed, well, they've come to us because of our faith. We've created a series of emails celebrating 250 years of our country. Find out how Christianity has played a role in this nation from its founding until now. You'll receive a new email each week throughout the series. Each one is designed to help you see our blessings and our heritage in a new way, how faith has played a powerful role all the way through. It's one way we're celebrating America's 250th. We hope you'll join us. You can sign up now at alanjackson.com/250. We're back now with political strategist Colin Reed. The Senate is scheduled to vote on confirming acting Attorney General Todd Blanche this week before they begin their summer break. But his path to confirmation is pretty narrow because of some of the Republicans and the choices they're making. What can President Trump do to aid that confirmation going through?
Well, Todd Blanche has already been confirmed by this body once to be the deputy AG. So many of these senators have already rendered their opinion on his qualifications and in the affirmative. And what's happened since is what's happening now, Alan, is not necessarily a reflection on Todd Blanche, but on the policies of the administration he's seeking to represent. And it's no secret that some of these Republican senators that President Trump has alienated, shall we say, are now making their voices heard. But look, ultimately, the president should get his nominee through at a certain point. It's just a question of when, and hopefully they can move on to other things, because the Department of Justice that Mr. Blanche is vying to continue overseeing was the source of so much frustration amongst conservatives in the last administration that it's imperative that it has the leadership it needs right now and is able to focus on doing its job.
Well, South Carolina has a special election to replace the late Senator Lindsey Graham on the ballot. It's a crowded field of candidates. It includes Congressman Ralph Norman, Senator Darlene Graham. Do you have any thoughts or predictions on that election?
Well, the primary or the first election is next week to see who's going to be the nominee. Obviously, Lindsey Graham's death was something that was felt immensely, certainly throughout the country, but especially here in Washington, D.C. He was one of those last remaining few people who were able to reach across the aisle, stand on principle, fight for what he believed in, but also be able to cut a deal and frankly act like a senator and move that chamber forward in the way it should. So he's got enormous shoes to fill. You know, his sister, the sitting senator now, she's got a number of advantages by virtue of her last name and President Trump's endorsement. But the same token, conservatives, Republican voters, they tend by and large to not fall in love with coronations. The United States fought a war 250 years ago to get away from the idea of being ruled from afar by being decreed. So if the new Senator Graham is going to continue in that role, she's going to have to earn it, and she's going to have to go out there and earn the votes of those voters in South Carolina, because South Carolina is a red state, deeply conservative state, and they're also someone who happens to be high up in the primary calendar. They're used to getting presidential candidates coming through their backyards every 4 years, so they've got they're pretty attuned to sussing out candidates.
Well, the summer break is approaching for the Senate. The Save America Act is still not passed. Some of the senators have said they'd be willing to forego their break to stay and do the hard work to get that through. Are they going to do that? Are they going to get the Save America Act passed, or are they going to go home and act like they didn't notice?
Well, to me, there's two kind of competing currents here. One, which is the Save America Act, which President Trump has made clear is one of his top priorities, if not the top priority. But at the same token, Majority Leader Thune has been pretty clear that there's just not the votes for it, and math is math. So there's two kind of competing interests right there. The other thing that I think you're seeing play out is for at least the next 90 some odd days, and then the lame duck session beyond, Washington will be controlled by one party, the Republican Party, and many of those voters elected President Trump and congressional majorities to do the hard work 2 years ago. And I think there's this sense throughout the country that this Congress could have done more over the last 2 years to deliver on some of those promises. Look, if the Democrats take over one or both chambers of houses of Congress, that's it. It's over. The administration's progress comes to an end. So the time to do the hard work is now, because those elections are coming, and after that lies the great unknown. So for all the priorities that remain outstanding, now is the time to get work done, because tomorrow is uncertain.
I continue to be baffled on this issue. It's an 80% issue in favor of having some sort of identification to vote. And yet the Senate seems to pretend like they don't notice. They're elected to represent the American people. Is their self-interest really that far ahead of the will of the American people?
Well, the Senate was always also elected to be the cooling saucer of the hot ideas that boil over from that. So the founders envisioned it from the House of Representatives. But look, the idea that elections should be safe and secure is not one that should be, it should be one that can be agreed upon, should be a bipartisan support. Certainly won't be in this political climate we're in, whereas one major political party, the Democratic Party, is going to be inherently against everything that the Republican Party puts forward. But by the same token, if the White House really wants this bill passed, it's up to them to twist some arms on Capitol Hill and get the majorities over there into gear.
It feels to me like common sense has become the radical idea. Things like voter ID, a secure border, men shouldn't compete in women's sports. Somehow that's being painted as a radical position. Is this more than a shift in election cycles?
Well, and that's one of the things that this president, among his other political talents, is able to recognize. He calls them the 80-20 issues, where he's got 80% of the people on his side on some of these common sense issues. And, it remains one of his great strengths. But of all the things and all the attributes assigned to Washington, D.C., common sense, unfortunately, is not often high on that list.
Unfortunately, we can pray. Colin, I thank you for your time today. Your insight is always helpful.
You bet, Alan.
We'll be back in a moment with your emails. I want to give you a personal invitation to join my podcast, Culture and Christianity.
You don't compromise the truth, but you say it where the people know that you care about them.
We're trying to understand how to take our faith outside the walls of the church and live it out in the marketplace.
I just never understood the double standard, because they punished me while my peers were allowed to talk about how devastated they were that Roe versus Wade was overturned.
I brought in some friends, people that are trying to do this on a regular basis.
They're never going to stop me, because the truth is the truth. I'd rather be on God's side than to be a coward.
We've been living in a season of unprecedented deception, propaganda, manipulation.
Our best option was to run. We were timing ourselves. I was trying to think, how can I protect my kids?
Well, I want to be a part of seeing culture and Christianity intersect. I hope you'll join the podcast soon. Thank you for taking the time to send your emails. Your thoughts and opinions are always a highlight. Pamela H. from Connecticut said the takeover of the Democrat Party by communists to gain a national platform was swift and shocking. The Communist Party is a separate entity from the Democrat and Republican parties, needs to be treated as such. They gained popularity and notoriety by deception. This action should be deemed illegal. Well, Pamela, we choose our leaders. I think we have to accept a lot of this responsibility. If we care enough to demand secure borders and secure elections, we can change. A viewer on YouTube commented on the episode with Tim Graham. It's easier to fool people than to convince them they've been fooled. There's no justice in this country. Fauci's living, breathing proof of this. Well, I agree with the notion about how we fool people, but I would also remind you that justice is not always immediate, but I promise you there is always ultimate justice. Ann C. from Alabama. Thank you so much for your emphasis on prayer. The world would change if God's people consistently and humbly got on their knees. I believe the message that we have in the New Testament is repent and believe the kingdom of God is at hand. If we'd begin to practice that, I'm quite confident we would see change. Don't wait for your pastor to change or the preacher to change or whoever else you're looking for. You and I can take a sentence prayer anywhere we go. If all of us will inject into our days, let's pray and make a sentence prayer, we'll see God respond in the midst of some of this chaos. There is hope, I promise. Folks, God's moving in the earth. Let's join Him in what He's doing. Thank you for spending a few moments of your day with us. You have a good evening.